So one of the most interesting things about Catrap as a game, before we kind of get into what the game actually is about and what the point of it is that this is probably one of the first games that I was familiar with that introduced a time rewinding mechanic. So if you get stuck in the middle of a room, you can actually rewind time to be able to rectify any mistakes that you make. So at the beginning of the game, it's pretty simple. You don't really have to use that ability very often because there's not really much going on in the room. But you will find from time to time, especially in the later levels, you can easily push a block or you can miss an enemy and just get stuck. So being able to have that ability to rewind time was pretty awesome, especially for a game which I believe this game came out in about 1990. So it became pretty popular, or the mechanic became pretty popular, and you would eventually see it in games like Prince of Persia, Braid, or if you really want to get nostalgic, you could look at Blinks the Time Sweeper for the Xbox as well. So Catrap or Pitman, as it's referred to in Japan, is a puzzle game in which you move cat characters through a room and clear all sorts of obstacles. So, for example, clearing out the monsters in the room will allow you to progress to the next stage. The advancement in the game will eventually grow difficult because there becomes an increasingly huge number of obstacles that kind of complicate the process of overcoming all of the monsters and ghosts. So basically you get into these situations where there's just a ton of stuff on the screen, and not only do you have monsters that you have to fight, but you also have, in this case, you have blocks that also break away when you run into them. So that can definitely put you in a bad position every once in a while. So basically, there's not really a way to lose so much. I mean, you can reset the level if you find that you get stuck, but there's not really, you can't really lose. So the monsters don't actually hurt you; they can't actually do damage to you. So basically, the worst thing that'll happen is you'll just get stuck and you'll have to restart the level. There are more than 100 levels in the game for the player to clear. Each one becomes much more difficult than the last. There's, with more room for error and can typically take a little bit longer to complete. So you can kind of see, like, the first few levels that we'll be going through here, they're only taking maybe 10 to 30 seconds. Occasionally I believe there's a level that takes me maybe a little over a minute or so to beat. They're pretty easy initially, but as the puzzles become more complex, you'll start to find that they just start taking longer and longer for you to get through. The first level involves no obstacles, only has one monster on the opposite side of the room to knock off. When you get to the last level, it involves a blockade of boulders and a whole assortment of ladders for the player to move and navigate to clear several floating ghosts. This is probably level 100, the most difficult level with the smallest margin for error. So basically, even if you make a simple mistake, that can pretty much cost you progress, and you'll basically just have to start the whole level over again. I kind of feel that Catrap is underrated as far as a lot of the Game Boy stuff is concerned. I know Game Boy was really popular with puzzle games and things of that nature. So you had Tetris, you had Catrap in this case, you had Boxel, which I believe was also very, very popular. So it was one of those. It was definitely one of the games that you could pick up and play, and always feel that you could make some sort of progress, even if it does take you a little while to get through. Even if it takes you a little while to get through some of the more difficult rooms in the game. I feel that if you have the opportunity to try it, I definitely would suggest it. Whether it's through an emulator, whether it's through, I believe it's on the Nintendo eShop. So if you have a 3DS, you can buy it for I think $3. It's definitely worth trying, especially if you're into puzzle games. I feel that if you have the chance to try it, I feel that you should. You definitely would be. You definitely would not be. You wouldn't regret it. It is a fun game. The puzzles can be a little, can be a pain in the ass from time to time. But I think overall, it's an enjoyable fun game, and I think you'd really be doing yourself a favor by checking it out.